Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drahon, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Character Concept Optimized, where we take a look at a multi-class concept and min-max it to its fullest potential. And today we are looking at the multi-class Cleric and Warlock, what I have dubbed the Prophet. It's been a while, hasn't it? The last Dungeons & Dragons video I did was all the way back in October. This video is actually ready to go during that time, but I was more interested in releasing Pathfinder content. But since I don't have anything planned this month, I thought I would go ahead and make this video official. Yes, this video has been ready for quite a few months. But anyway, since October, we've had some new additions to the 5th edition roster, so I thought I would go ahead and revisit the rules of this series and update one of them. The very first rule is official Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition content. This means that I am not allowed to use Unearthed Arcana or third-party or even secondary-party materials such as Kobold Press or Rune Terror Tides of Bilgewater. And I'm not even allowed to use homebrew materials either. Now, this has to be updated. What does that mean? Well, that means that we are not using any books with a red spine, even though they are indeed compatible with 5th edition rules. The 2024 release of the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide will not be used for this series. I am keeping my promise, like many Dungeons & Dragons YouTubers have made, but most of them have gone back on their word. I will not be buying the 2024 copies of 5th edition. Everything is from the 2014 release of the Player's Handbook up until Vecna, Eve of Ruin, and Quests of the Infinite Staircase. Once I have completed my collection, that is it for Dungeons & Dragons. Let's go ahead and continue. So, why the Cleric and Warlock? Much like with the Druid Warlock multi-class, this is definitely a bad optimization. We have Wisdom and Charisma as our spellcasting modifiers for these two classes. But there is definitely some potential when it comes to flavor, as the deity and your patron can either be the same entity or rivaling entities. For example, the Raven Queen is a Twilight Domain cleric, and is a possible patron for the Hexblade Warlock, since the Raven Queen was the progenitor of the Hexblades. Also, Asmodeus is classified as a deity for Trickery Domain clerics, but is also a possible patron for the Fiend subclass. As for rivaling patron deity, we have a perfect example in the Kalishtar, which have the Kurai as well as the Dreaming Dark Kurai, which can be life or light domain clerics having to combat against the rivaling forces in the Dreaming Dark, who could be classified as Great Old Ones. If you want more information on the Kalishtar, I would recommend checking out the character concept video on that race. And the patron versus deity combination is the most popular. However, the deity being your patron is the build style we are going for today. Our goals are going to be as follows. Your allies need to be protected and healed as much as possible. You need to be able to summon guardians to aid you in battle. And we are also going to be playing off of the abilities of some of our fellow min-max builds, such as the Druzard, Valadin, and Warden, as well as the Warlock and even the speedrunners the Blood Oath, Vigilante, and the Bonk, making sure they are able to utilize their abilities to their maximum potential as well. This is simply a wombo combo. An alternative build is to snuff out the light of life and make everything you touch die. Very simple concepts. Which combo will you be picking? Let me know down below. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the build. For build number 1, our prophet is going to be in service to one of two deities. Either Paladin, also known as Bahamut, or... I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, but it seems to be Angarad. The second build is going to be worshipping either Vecna, Orcus, Myrkul, Noel, or Kiran Shali. For our race, the best two races for optimization are going to be either the Osama or the Dompier. With the Osama, you get a 30-foot movement speed, dark vision of 60 feet, celestial resistance, healing hands, and the Lightbearer trait. You also have Celestial Revelation. However, the best Celestial Revelation that we will have to pick is the Radiant Consumption. With the Dompier, you have a 35-foot movement speed, your Ancestral Legacy, Dark Vision, Deathless Nature, and Spider Climb, along with your Vampiric Bite, which uses your Constitution modifier and is a 1d4 damage. This is actually less optimal than the Osama, since it uses another modifier, which is going to be quote-unquote mad. We do not want a mad build, so we are going to keep the Osama as our main race. You could also use the Vidalkin in this build, but again, the Osama is going to be the most optimal for both of these builds. Moving on to our background. The best two backgrounds are going to be the Silver Quill Student and the Knight of Solamnia. For our skill proficiencies, the Silver Quill Student are going to give us Intimidation and Persuasion, with Knight of Solamnia giving us access to Athletics and Survival. From the Silver Quill Student, we get access to Silver Quill Initiate, giving us access to the cantrips of Thaumaturge and Visage Mockery, with a free first level spell in Silvery Barbs. For Knight of Solamnia, our feature is the Squire of Solamnia, giving us access to Mount Up and Precise Strike. For our first build, the Cleric Domain of Peace is going to be the more optimal choice here, and is in fact the best choice when pairing up with the Warlock. We're going with 8 levels of Cleric, and the Peace Domain gives us access to Implement of Peace, Emboldening Bond, the Channel Divinity of Balm of Peace, We also get access to Protective, Bond, and Potent Spellcasting. With Balm of Peace starting at 2nd level, you use your Channel Divinity to make your very presence a soothing balm. As an action, you can move up to your speed without provoking opportunity attacks, and when you move within 5 feet of any other creature during this action, you can restore a number of hit points to that creature equal to 2d6 plus your wisdom modifier. Minimum of 1 hit point. A creature can receive this healing only once whenever you take this action, so you are basically a Chardalon Stride, but instead of burning your foes, you are healing them. Very useful. Next is Protective Bond. At 6th level, the bond you forge between people helps them protect each other. When a creature affected by your Emboldening Bond feature is about to take damage, a second bonded creature within 30 feet of the first can use its reaction to teleport to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the first. The second creature then takes all the damage instead. This pairs up well with characters such as the Valadin, which is one of those builds that wants to protect. The same goes for a lot of the Warden's summonings. On the flip side, your secondary prophet is going to want to take up the Death Domain, giving you access to proficiency in martial weapons. Your Reaper feature is going to give you the spell of Sapping Sting. Your Channel Divinity is Touch of Death. You also have Inescapable Destruction and Divine Strike. Your Touch of Death will let you use your Channel Divinity to destroy any creature's life force with a touch. When you hit a creature with a melee attack, you can use your Channel Divinity to deal extra necrotic damage, equal to 5 times plus twice of your Cleric level. With Inescapable Destruction, necrotic damage dealt by your Cleric spells ignores resistances to necrotic damage, which is very useful against undead and most fiends. Moving on to our Warlock. For our first build, the otherworldly patron is going to be the Celestial, giving us access to the bonus cantrips of Light and Sacred Flame. You also get access to Healing Light, Radiant Soul, and Celestial Resistance. For your Eldritch invocations, we are going with Devil's Sight, Eldritch Mind, Eyes of the Runekeeper, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones, Minions of Chaos, and Undying Servitude. We are also going to get access to the Pact Boon, Pact of the Chain. For our secondary patron, we are going with the Undead Patron, giving us access to Form of Dread, Grave Touched, and Necrotic Husk. Our Eldritch invocations are going to be Devil's Sight, Eldritch Mind, Eldritch Smite, Life Drinker, Thirsting Blade, and Undying Servitude, to be paired with our Pact Boon, Pact of the Blade. For our feats, the most optimal feats to get access to are going to be Alert, mostly because you are going to want to make sure you can set up the battlefield with the more optimal strategy. Being able to move your allies around the board as you see fit. For your metamagic adept, the Quicken spell and Twin spell are also very optimal, mostly for your healing spells that will actually be able to heal more but can only target one person normally. Next is the Warcaster, which is definitely useful for when you are concentrating on your spells. such as the Healing Spirit. The Great Weapon Master is also a very good option, especially for the secondary build for the Prophet that focuses on dealing damage. Now for our final calculations for build number 1, which focuses on the Peace Domain and the Otherworldly Patron of the Celestial. Of course, we are going with the Awesomar with Radiant Consumption and the background of Silverquill Student. For our feats, we are going with Alert and Metamagic Adept. This build focuses on protecting your allies and making sure some of your other protective allies are able to protect some of the more vulnerable and squishy characters, such as the weak NPC or some of the other multi-class builds that focus on concentration magic, such as the Warden summoning spells. The second build is going to focus on dealing the most damage, which is why its feats are Warcaster and Great Weapon Master. The Death Domain's martial weapon proficiency is definitely going to help deal more damage using some heavier weaponry such as the Great Axe. Thanks to your Pact of the Blade feature, you are able to use Life Drinker and Thirsting Blade as well as the Eldritch Smite, dealing a lot of damage. In fact, if we take a look at the numbers here, if you were to go with a Maul, you will have access to 2d6 damage right out the gate. With the Precise Strike feature from your Knight of Solamnia, that is an extra 1d8 damage. Radiant Consumption being active will give you access to 6 extra radiant damage. The Great Weapon Master is going to increase this damage by 10. Thanks to Touch of Death, that is an additional 21 necrotic damage. Your Divine Strike is going to give you access to 2d8 necrotic damage. Grave Touch or Form of Dread is going to give you access to an additional 1d6 necrotic damage. Eldritch Smite is going to do an additional 6d8 damage. Life Drinker will give you access to another 3 necrotic damage, and then your Strength modifier should be a minimum of 2. Which, I'm not going to do the exact math here, just know that that is a good amount of damage just by doing one attack. This is not counting any multi-attacks that you could have from the Warlock. And I will say, this is going to be the perfect villain NPC for any Dungeon Masters out there. Have this character in your evil schemes, maybe as the main villain. The prophet that is looking to bring their deity into the mortal realm. Similar to, say, Archon the Cruel and Cruel from the Descent into Avernus, who serve Tiamat. Very similar concept, actually. I think Cruel is actually a good example of a prophet. Anyway, that is all for today's build. What did you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. And let me know what multi-class build you would like to see next. With that being said, this has been Drehon, and I am offline.